morning. My name is Dave Tincher, and I'm the state's purchasing director. Thank you for taking part in this fiscal year 2017 training on state purchasing procedures and the state purchasing card program. I want to welcome all state officials who are required to take this annual training. I know that all of you have busy schedules, so I sincerely appreciate you taking 2 hours of your day today to participate in this session. West Virginia Code 5A-3-60 requires certain state officials to take 2 hours of training annually on purchasing procedures and purchasing card use. Those required to take this training include all executive department cabinet secretaries and their deputies, commissioners and their deputies and assistant commissioners, directors and their deputies and assistant directors, and department heads and their deputies and department assistants. This training, which was previously offered twice in person during each fiscal year, will now be offered twice via WebEx, once in the spring and once in the fall. The fall session will be recorded each year and made available online at the State Auditor's Office and the Purchasing Division websites. The online recording will suffice to meet this requirement for any individual who is unable to participate in one of the 2 scheduled live webinars. For those individuals who choose to view the online recording, they must send us their certificate of completion to ensure that they receive credit for viewing the training. Today's session will last until approximately 11 a.m. Samantha Knapp with the Purchasing Division will begin, followed by Travis Mullinax from the State Auditor's Office. We take a staff photo each year, which you can see on this slide. This photo was taken this past June. We have a staff of approximately 55 full-time employees at the Capitol Complex in Building 15 and the State Surplus Property location in Dunbar. Most of you understand that the Purchasing Division provides a service function to our agencies. We are responsible for the procurement of goods and services that your organization must need to operate your programs and services. Of course, if you have concerns in general or specifically about purchasing transactions, please contact me directly at 558-2538 or email me at david.tincher@wv.gov, and I'll be happy to assist. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Samantha Knapp, who serves as the Communication and Professional Development Manager of the Purchasing Division.
Thank you, Dave. On behalf of the West Virginia Purchasing Division, I'd like to thank each of you for participating in today's webinar. As Dave mentioned, my name is Samantha Knapp, and I oversee the Communication and Professional Development Unit of the Purchasing Division, and I'm joined today by Travis Mullinax of the State Auditor's Office. Today's webinar will be recorded and posted on the Purchasing Division's website, and will also be accessible from the State Auditor's Office website within the next few weeks. This live webinar and its recording have been approved for 2.4 hours of CLE credit from the West Virginia State Bar. If you are interested in obtaining CLEs for today's live webinar, please email your first and last name and bar ID number to samantha.s.knapp, that's K-N-A-P-P, @wv.gov. Should you have any questions throughout today's presentation, you may type them into the question and answer box on the right-hand side of your screen. Be advised that you may have to expand the drop-down arrow in order to see the box in which to type your question. Be sure to submit all questions to the host. We will take a few minutes at the end of today's presentation to answer these questions. We will also take a 5-minute break between presentations to allow you a chance to stand up, use a restroom, or maybe grab a cup of coffee. But in any case, this training will last until approximately 11 a.m. Those of you on today's webinar represent the top level of management within state government. All of you are responsible for leading and managing the delivery of services required of your agencies to the citizens of West Virginia. In order for your agencies to be successful in delivering these mandated services to our citizens, your agencies need many different types of commodities and services. The Purchasing Division's core function is to obtain on your behalf these commodities and services as you need them to allow you to fulfill your mission. We depend on and work closely with your procurement staff to fulfill these needs. On this slide, you can see the Purchasing Division's mission, and that is to provide prudent and fair spending practices in procuring quality goods and services at the lowest cost to state taxpayers by maximizing efficiencies and offering guidance to our customers. During today's webinar, we hope that you will obtain a general understanding of who we are, but also what we do and how we do it. Before we get into the meat of how we buy, I would like to introduce you to the organizational structure of the purchasing division. As you can see on the screen, the division is made up of 3 sections in addition to our legal counsel. They include the Acquisition and Contract Administration section, the Communication and Technical Services section, and Program Services. The following staff members oversee these various sections. Assistant Director Mike Sheets oversees the Acquisition and Contract Administration section. Assistant Director Diane Holly Brown oversees the Communication and Technical Services section, and Assistant Director Elizabeth Perdue oversees Program Services. Additionally, Jimmy Meadows serves as the Purchasing Division's General Counsel. As Dave mentioned, we have approximately 55 employees between our location at the Capitol Complex and our surplus property location in Dunbar. Now I'll highlight the responsibilities of each section. The Acquisition and Contract Administration section is responsible for processing purchases expected to exceed $25,000 on behalf of state agencies which fall under our authority. This section also maintains the contract management and agency inspection services programs. We have a staff of 14 buyers and supervisors who are responsible for processing the commodities and services on behalf of state agencies. Our buyers are assigned by agency rather than by commodity. They serve as the subject matter experts on the state purchasing process and not in the specific commodities and services that they buy. The reason that we're organized this way is because we believe our expertise should be in our core mission, which is purchasing, and that the staff within your agencies have the specific technical expertise in most cases of the commodities and services that you need. There is one exception. We recently assigned one buyer to perform the procurement function specifically for construction-related contracts. Construction solicitations can be very complex, and having a buyer on staff dedicated solely to construction ensures that we have one person to serve as a subject matter expert on the processes and procedures related to construction contracts. Having our buyers assigned specific agencies means that each of your agencies has a sole point of contact in the purchasing division, which allows the purchasing division to provide better customer service to your agencies. The assigned buyer for your agency works together with your agency-designated procurement officers to buy the commodities and services required by your agencies. These relationships are critical in ensuring success during the procurement process. The next section is the Communication and Technical Services section. This section is responsible for technology, communication, professional development and training, and related administrative functions, including vendor registration, imaging and record retention, bid receipt, and purchase order encumbrance. The final section is Program Services. This section is responsible for several programs administered by the division, including surplus property, which manages the state and federal programs for property no longer needed within the respective governments, the Travel Management Office, which offers guidance to state business travelers and oversees statewide contracts for travel-related services, and the Fixed Assets Unit, which maintains the state's inventory of personal property. As mentioned previously, we also have a general counsel who manages our legal affairs, including contract terms and conditions, disputes and resolutions, and other relevant legal and administrative issues. Most state governments throughout the nation have a centralized procurement function similar to West Virginia. However, the administration and rules vary with each state. West Virginia Code centralizes the procurement function of state government within the purchasing division in the same way that other functions such as personnel, technology, finance, and even retirement are centralized for most agencies. There are many benefits to the services of the centralized procurement function. Having the consistency of laws, rules, and procedures, gaining economies of scale, and providing system transparency are all important in the procurement of goods and services. The Purchasing Division manages procurement transactions for agencies under its authority, including but not limited to commodities, services, and technology. state agencies are generally delegated the authority to purchase up to $25,000, with the purchasing division processing all transactions expected to exceed that dollar threshold. The purchasing division awards statewide contracts for commodities and services that are common to most agencies and include office supplies, technology equipment and services, and vehicles, as well as other commodities and services. We bid and award statewide contracts for these common commodities and services on behalf of all state agencies to take advantage of the economies of scale and to make the ordering process more efficient. A list of all statewide contracts can be found on the Purchasing Division's website. We also buy a wide range of agency-specific commodities and services for individual agencies. An example of this would be food and medical supplies for the Division of Corrections. We also piggyback selected contracts bid and awarded by other public entities around the country to gain economies of scale and shorten the procurement process. All of our procedures are based on laws and rules established in West Virginia Code and the West Virginia Code of State Rules. Our primary code citation is 5A-3, and our rules are established in Title 148, Section 1 of the Code of State Rules. As noted on this slide, there are also specific code citations for architectural and engineering services, construction, and our two set-aside programs, Correctional Industries and the State Use Program, also known as Sheltered Workshops. As is the case with many other state functions, this centralized procurement system is not without exception. The legislature has statutorily granted various state agencies the ability to perform some or all of those agencies' needed procurement functions outside of the centralized procurement mandate. The Purchasing Division is currently aware of 37 full or partial statutory exemptions. Full exemptions include entities such as the legislative branch, the judicial branch, and higher education, while partial exemptions have been granted for the Division of Highways for road construction and PEIA contracts for insurance coverage, among many others. The Purchasing Division has compiled an unofficial list of these statutory exemptions, which can be found on the Purchasing Division's website, and of course we'll give you that site at the end of today's presentation. The Code of State Rules 148 CSR stipulates that all purchases must be approved by the Secretary or head of a spending unit or designee whose name must be filed with the Purchasing Director. The person designated is responsible for the agency's procurement function at the agency delegated level and also works directly with the Purchasing Division to process formal acquisitions expected to exceed $25,000. They should be involved at all levels of any future purchases your agency plans to make. We have a comprehensive training program which educates our agency purchasers on the laws and rules which govern the state purchasing process. Trainings are offered through a variety of platforms, including in-person, online via webinars and training modules, and through an annual conference. It is essential that the designated procurement officers are trained on the Purchasing Division's procedures. In addition to being responsible for any internal training conducted at the agency level, the designee is now also required by the West Virginia Code of State Rules to attend 10 hours annually of training offered by the Purchasing Division, which is tracked on a fiscal year basis. Their understanding and knowledge of the state purchasing process can ensure that your agency is in compliance with state law. The designated procurement officers for each state spending unit under our authority are listed on our website, and again, the link will be included at the end of our presentation today. During fiscal year 2016, the Purchasing Division processed more than 900 new purchase orders, exceeding $1.8 billion. This amount was significantly more than the previous year due to a $1.3 billion contract for managed care organizations that we processed on behalf of DHHR. More than 65% of the purchase orders for fiscal year 2016 were awarded to West Virginia companies. In addition to our new purchase orders, we also processed more than 1,300 change orders to existing contracts, as well as received a total of 4,331 paid registrations during fiscal year 2016, with revenue generating more than $540,000. Most purchases are based on competition, and in any competition, somebody wins and somebody doesn't. Sometimes vendors may disagree with the process or a particular outcome. They are provided the right to protest under the CUDA state rules. We average 1 to 2% of contracts protested annually. Our records document that over time, however, the award decision made by the purchasing division prevailed in 99.23% of all transactions. There are also some awards and certifications I would like to highlight. For 4 years straight, the West Virginia Purchasing Division has earned the Achievement of Excellence in Procurement Award from the National Procurement Institute. The Purchasing Division was the only governmental agency in West Virginia and one of only 13 state agencies in the United States and Canada to receive this award in 2016. The application was evaluated based on education, professionalism, e-procurement, productivity, training, leadership, rules, and procedures. The Purchasing Division is a proponent of national networking. We belong to the National Association of State Purchasing Officials, referred to as NASPO, which is the National Professional Association representing all 50 states' purchasing organizations. We meet, collaborate, and network with other states on a regular basis through this organization to improve the public procurement function locally and nationally. In 2016, we received 2 honorable mentions for the George C. Cronin Awards, which are sponsored by NASPO. Our 2 programs which received recognition included our statewide procurement certification program and our recruitment and retention plan. NASPO also sponsors cooperative contracts that are bid and awarded on behalf of some or all states to increase economies of scale, and we participate in those that are compliant with our law. We also seek state and national certifications for our buyers and other professional staff. Those who are eligible are certified, and the minority that is not currently certified is on track to become certified as they become eligible. Spending limits have been established for agency delegated purchases, which are outlined on this slide. Agencies cannot exceed a bid threshold without the proper level of documentation and bidding. Commodities and services that are expected to cost $2,500 or less require no bids. For purchases of $2,500 and 1 cent to $5,000, 3 verbal bids are required where possible, and the lowest bid meeting specifications must be awarded the purchase order or contract. And for purchases of $5,000 and 1 cent to $25,000, require 3 written bids where possible, and the lowest bid meeting specifications must be awarded the purchase order or contract. The Purchasing Division has developed a purchasing decision path, which can be found as Appendix M of the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook. This slide highlights a few of those steps. The first step is determination of need. The agency must determine the product or service required, including quality level, quantity, delivery requirement, and estimated cost. Once a need is established, the agency must determine if the product or service is available from any of the 3 following internal resources: Correctional Industries, the State Use Program, also known as Sheltered Workshops, and the West Virginia State Agency for Surplus Property. Correctional Industries and Sheltered Workshops are mandatory for use. Therefore, if the product or service is available through either of these means, it must be acquired in this manner. If the product or service is available but not in the required time, quality, quantity, or other factors, a written waiver must be issued from Correctional Industries or Sheltered Workshops in accordance with purchasing guidelines. Surplus property is optional for use by state agencies looking to procure used furniture or other used commodities, but a waiver from surplus property is not required. If the product or service is not available from internal resources, The agency must determine if that product or service is available from a statewide or agency contract. If it is available, the agency must purchase the product or service in accordance with purchasing guidelines as indicated within the statewide or agency contract. Step 4 requires you to determine if a purchase is considered an emergency purchase or sole source. We will be covering these purchases in more detail later, but for your reference, more information on these types of purchases can be found in Section 3 of the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook. If the competitive product or service is not available on a statewide or agency contract or through an internal resource, the agency must utilize its delegated purchasing procedures if the acquisition is estimated to cost $25,000 or less. To view the entire 11 steps of the purchasing decision path, the link to the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook will be offered at the end of our presentation today. And as previously mentioned, the decision path may be found as Appendix N. The Purchasing Division utilizes various methods of solicitations, which we'll get into shortly. However, one thing to keep in mind is that a vendor must be properly registered with the Purchasing Division in order to receive a contract award or purchase order. So let's go over our vendor registration requirements briefly. All vendors conducting business with the state of West Virginia are required to register with the Purchasing Division in accordance with West Virginia Code 5A-3-12. There is an exception to this registration requirement, which are purchasing card vendors providing travel-related services or receiving an aggregate total yearly payment of less than $25,000 from a state spending unit. Keep in mind, vendors do not have to register in order to submit a bid, but only to receive a purchase order or contract. Vendors are encouraged to register through the Vendor Self-Service Vendor Portal as part of WV Oasis, but they may also still complete a paper form through our vendor registration office. Vendors receiving orders for products or services exceeding $2,500, regardless of payment method, must pay an annual fee of $125. There are a couple of exceptions as to who must pay the fee. These include purchasing card vendors providing travel-related services or receiving an aggregate total yearly payment of less than $25,000 from a spending unit, as well as sole source vendors and those vendors who are providing products and services that have been declared as non-competitive, exempted products or services listed in Section 9 of the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook. Vendors must also be in good standing with other state and local agencies in order to receive a purchase order or contract. So now that we've discussed the vendor registration requirements, let's go over some of the competitive solicitation types used by the Purchasing Division. The first two that we'll discuss are best value procurement types. The first type is a request for proposals method, referred to as an RFP, and is typically used for services. This type is limited to procurements with an estimated value of $250,000 or more. The agency must obtain approval from the purchasing director to use this method and must submit in writing its justification for using this process and whether it will replace a current purchase order or contract and identifying that contract if it is. The RFP is received in two distinct parts, the technical proposal and the cost proposal. The evaluation is based on a 100-point total score, with cost representing a minimum of 30 of the 100 points possible. The technical proposal is open first, and the RFP evaluation committee will review and evaluate those, sending their written consensus to the Purchasing Division buyer. Vendors must score a minimum of 70% of the 70 points possible in order to be considered. Vendors not attaining the minimum acceptable score, which is 49 points in most cases, will be disqualified and removed from further consideration. The cost proposals will then be opened. The evaluation committee will review the cost proposals, assign appropriate points, and make a final consensus recommendation to the Purchasing Division buyer. The award is based on the highest score, which is a combination of the technical proposals and the cost proposals. The second best value procurement method is the expression of interest, or EOI, which is utilized in the procurement of architectural and engineering services for projects estimated to exceed $250,000. The EOI includes a statement of qualifications and performance data and may anticipate concepts and proposed methods of approach to a project. The committee will evaluate the information submitted with the proposal and then develop a short list of 3 firms that they believe are best qualified to perform the desired service. They'll then meet with each firm on the short list to conduct an interview to discuss the anticipated concepts and proposed methods. The committee will rank the firms deemed to be most highly qualified based on the information discussed during their interview and submit that list to the purchasing division. And at that time, the agency will enter into negotiations with the most qualified firm as to the scope of service and price. If the agency fails to negotiate a satisfactory contract with the most qualified firm, they'll then move on to the next firm. And if negotiations fail with all firms, then they will rebid the solicitation. The most commonly used type of procurement method is a request for quotations method, or RFQ. This type of purchase is used to acquire all tangible property, such as equipment and supplies. The award for an RFQ is made to the lowest responsible bidder who meets all mandatory specifications. Over the next few slides, we'll take a closer look at RFQs. RFQs are the gold standard of public procurement. If you know exactly what you need, you should be able to write specifications for it while increasing your vendor competition and getting the commodity or service for the lowest price possible. The success of the solicitation relies heavily on the specifications. A specification is a concise statement explaining the type of product or service, the quality level, and special requirements in the design, performance, delivery, and usage. There are 3 different types of specifications, including brand name or equal, performance, and design. Over the next 2 slides, I'll go into detail about each of these. The first type is a brand name or equal specification and is based on one or more manufacturer's commodity description, model number, and quality level. The general name of the item, such as automobiles or air blowers, should be listed first. The manufacturer and model number of the item or items should immediately follow. The words "or equal" must follow the brand name to inform vendors that alternate bids will be considered. In addition to the brand name, the agency must also list the required features of that item. An example of a brand name or equal specification would be if an agency needs uniforms made. The specifications may state that the agency is looking for uniform pants made by or equal to the Levi brand. Unless the specification is listed as mandatory on the solicitation, it cannot be used to disqualify a vendor. Non-mandatory language may be used to clarify the mandatory specifications, but they have no bearing on the final evaluation of the bid. The other 2 specification types include performance and design. The performance specification is less structured as to how the product is made and more structured as to how well it operates. Total ownership costs for operating and maintaining the product should be included in the specifications. An example of a performance specification would be to say that the copier must print 100 sheets of paper per minute. The design specification, on the other hand, concentrates on the dimensional and other physical requirements of the item being purchased. The design specification is used when the commodity has to be specially made to meet the agency's unique needs. An example of a design specification would be to say that the computer desk must be 60 inches by 30 inches by 30 inches based on a width by depth by height. In 2014, the state of West West Virginia implemented WV Oasis, the state's new enterprise resource planning system, which brought with it a new financial management system and a vendor self-service vendor portal. WV Oasis allows us to advertise all solicitations expected to exceed $5,000, and vendors now have access to that information in real time. The advertising mechanism in WV Oasis is called the West Virginia Purchasing Bulletin. Using the vendor self-service vendor portal, vendors can search for current solicitations using keywords. They can view solicitations processed at the agency delegated level as well as those that are processed at the formal level. Within WV Oasis, solicitations are assigned an A or a C in front of the document name. Those with an A are processed at the agency level, and those with a C, which stands for centralized, are processed by the purchasing division. As previously mentioned, a vendor does not have to be registered to submit a bid. However, one of the benefits of registering is that the vendor can assign itself commodity codes, which means that they would be notified anytime a solicitation is publicized using those commodity codes. And this just makes it much easier for the vendors to stay informed of ongoing solicitations. As part of WV Oasis, the purchasing division now accepts electronic bids in addition to paper and fax bids. Any bid that is faxed will not be time-stamped as complete until the last page comes through. Therefore, it is best to encourage vendors not to wait until the last minute to submit their bids, because if the bid is even 1 minute late, that bid will be disqualified. Formal bid openings occur at 1:30 p.m. at the Purchasing Division offices in Building 15 of the Capitol Complex, and the address is noted on this slide for your reference. These bid openings usually occur Tuesday through Thursday of each week. During the bid evaluation process, vendors may request a preference if they meet specific guidelines as outlined on the vendor preference form, which you can find on the Purchasing Division's form page. The maximum preference they can request is 5%. In addition to the resident vendor preference, a veteran may request a 3.5% preference. This vendor preference cannot be used between or among West Virginia vendors and may not be requested in construction contracts. All requests for preference must be submitted with the vendor's bid to be considered. The Purchasing Division requests the assistance of the state agency in evaluating the bids for its specific solicitations, since they know better than the Purchasing Division what they need. Therefore, they review the bids and then submit a recommendation for award to the Purchasing Division. For formal acquisitions, or those that are expected to exceed $25,000, the Purchasing Division is the only entity that can issue or change those contracts, and all questions regarding those contracts should be directed to the Purchasing Division buyer who is or was responsible for processing that contract. After the evaluation process, the Purchasing Division will send the contract to the Attorney General's office for approval as to form. Upon approval, the contract is then encumbered by the Purchasing Division and sent to the vendor. Keep in mind that no work can begin until the vendor has the encumbered purchase order or contract in hand or until a notice to proceed is issued. This flow chart is offered to show you the Purchasing Division's internal workflow for approvals. It begins with the buyer, who may need to go back and forth with the agency several times to ensure the specifications are clearly written and allow for competition. After the contract is in its final form, the buyer supervisor will approve and forward the transaction to the Purchasing Division's Communication and Technical Services section, who conducts a final review to ensure all components of the contract are complete. The contract is then submitted to the Attorney General's office for approval as to form and returned to the Purchasing Division, where it is encumbered. An encumbrance is the commitment of funds for that contract. West Virginia Code of State Rules gives the vendors the opportunity to challenge the contract specifications written by the agency or to challenge the ultimate contract award. The protest of specifications allows the vendor to protest the specifications prior to the actual award being made and prior to bids being opened, and must be submitted no later than 5 working days prior to the bid opening. The protest of specifications is intended to guard against an agency that intentionally or maybe even inadvertently drafted specifications that circumvent the requirement that competitive bids be obtained. This may be done by including specifications that are too restrictive, that only a few vendors can meet them, or by including specifications that are too vague, allowing vendors to provide a less than acceptable quality level commodity or service. The protest of award is the most common type of protest received by the purchasing division. This type of protest must be submitted no later than 5 working days after the award is made, which is the day that the contract is encumbered. And there are several reasons a vendor may protest the contract of award. The winning vendor might not be a resident as they claimed and for which they received a preference during the evaluation process. The winning vendor may have bid inferior commodities that are not in fact equal, or the winning vendor may have failed to meet a mandatory specification, which was ultimately missed by the agency and or the purchasing division during the evaluation process. So we talked about the various types of competitive procurements, but what are some other types of procurements that don't fit the mold? One type is sole source procurements. Sole source means that a commodity or service is unique in nature and is only available from one known vendor. In all cases, the law requires that agencies document their attempts to secure competition. For purchases up to $25,000, the agency declares and processes its own sole source procurements and must provide a written justification in the agency file. For sole source procurements expected to exceed $25,000, the agency must complete and submit to the purchasing division a sole source request for consideration form to determine the basis for the sole source procurement and the specific efforts made to determine the availability of other sources. The purchasing division will then advertise the potential sole source purchase in the purchasing bulletin on the vendor self-service to allow vendors the opportunity to express interest in the sole source procurement. The Code of State Rules states that a sole source posting that causes inquiry and concern or request to bid are sufficient to allow the purchasing division director to reject the sole source and mandate bidding. But if no vendors respond, the purchasing division will then proceed with the direct purchase with the sole source vendor. West Virginia Code also recognizes that purchases may be necessary when unforeseen causes arise, including delays by contractors, delays in transportation, an unanticipated volume of work, flooding to workplace buildings, power outages, or fires. 3 bids are required for emergency purchases if possible, and emergency purchases that are expected to exceed $25,000 must first be approved by the purchasing director. However, if the emergency occurs after business hours, on a weekend, or on a holiday, the agency may proceed with the emergency purchase but must follow up with the purchasing director on the first business day with their justification and all documentation. An emergency purchase is a short-term solution to fix a problem and may not be used as a permanent or long-term solution or to circumvent the normal competitive bidding process. Instead, an agency purchase allows for an immediate solution to a problem until it can be properly bid. And keep in mind that emergency purchases are not used for hardship resulting from neglect, poor planning, or lack of organization by the spending unit. The purchasing division also maintains a non-competitive exempt list of commodities and services, which is updated each July. This list can be found in Section 9 of the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook. The purchasing director has determined that it is not possible to obtain these commodities and services through the competitive bidding process, and purchasing division approval is not required for these procurements unless specifically noted. However, spending units purchasing from vendors under the exempt list must continue to observe the standard purchasing procedures associated with a normal purchase of the same dollar amount, including vendor registration, and must continue to submit contracts to the Attorney General's office for approval as to form. Now that we've discussed the organizational structure of the purchasing division, in addition to the various types of procurement methods, I'd like to briefly touch on other programs that are administered by the purchasing division. The first is the Travel Management Office. The Travel Management Office offers guidance regarding the state travel policy, which governs state employees who are conducting in-state, out-of-state, and international business travel with the state of West Virginia. This policy addresses such areas as transportation, lodging, meals, registration fees, other expenses, and forms of payment. Fixed assets. Agencies are responsible for certifying their inventory by July 15th of every year. The agency head must certify the date of the last physical inventory, that all items meeting entry requirements have been entered into the fixed assets system, and that all retired items were retired in accordance with surplus property policy, procedures, and guidelines. And a physical inventory must be conducted once every 3 years. And the final program is surplus property. The West Virginia State Agency for Surplus Property is responsible for the disposition of commodities or expendable commodities no longer needed by the state, or more specifically by the owning state agency. Surplus property must approve all methods of disposition related to the commodities, regardless of the acquisition cost. This slide leaves you with a few helpful resources should you wish to learn more about the state purchasing process, including the procurement officer listing I mentioned earlier in this presentation, the Purchasing Division's website, again, which I mentioned multiple times throughout the presentation, the Purchasing Division Procedures Handbook, which I would encourage each of you to bookmark on your computer, as it is something that you or your procurement staff may refer to periodically. We've also included links to the Vendor Procurement Guide, the Transparency webpage, and our intranet site. Please keep in mind that we will take a few minutes at the end of today's presentation to answer any questions that you may have, so please continue to send those questions to the host. On behalf of the Purchasing Division, I appreciate your attention.
Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Travis Molinax, Training Administrating for the Purchasing Card Program on behalf of the State Auditor's Office. It is my joy to be with you this morning. Thank you, Samantha, for your presentation and the Purchasing Division. I look forward to our time together as we will be discussing the Purchasing Card Program, and we'll be going through some history together with you. We'll also talk about coordinator information as well as some reconciliation during our time here together. First things first, I would like to discuss with you the history of the Purchasing Card Program. Not so much specifically with the state of West Virginia, but actually the P-Card in general. Why is this program so important to our state, and how did it begin? What are its roots? To do so, we actually need to go back to 1937. This is actually when the first commercial card payment system was implemented by a group of major airlines. And the primary use for the corporate card at this time was simply used as a central billing approach for air travel. And it was centrally controlled. And then from the traveler's viewpoint, it operated in a similar fashion to what we commonly refer to as ghost cards today. In the 1970s, though, there were two large firms that launched corporate card offerings to address business travel and entertainment expenses, if you will, T&E. Now, it was during this time that cardless accounts, commonly known as ghost accounts or ghost cards, were introduced as a method of charging airline tickets to a central account without the apparent risk of employees spending freely on the card. The card issuers began offering liability waivers to their corporate customers, the end user organizations, to mitigate the concern about inappropriate card usage, naturally resulting in increased distribution of corporate cards. Then in the 1980s, the late 1980s actually, the first purchasing card, P card if you will, was introduced as a means to purchase general non-business travel and entertainment expenses such as maintenance, repair and operating goods, and business supplies. So P cards were introduced as and continue to be a corporate liability central payment vehicles for which payment in full must be made by the end user's organization to the card issuer at least monthly. Now, following the wide market acceptance of P cards in the mid-1990s, the concept of combining the corporate cards into a one-card type solution emerged, and that is where we are today. So as we consider the P card, and specifically now the payment processes, we're going to take a look at or contrast traditional processes, payment processes versus P card processes. And so let's take a moment now to talk about the traditional procure-to-pay type process. And what I mean by that is when you have most often a requisition and then a purchase order followed by an invoice and then check payment. Let's compare that now to the P card process. And when we do so, we're going to quickly discover why the P card itself is truly the preferred method of payment in state government. Now, the transactional or process cost, when we consider a traditional procure-to-pay process, is the same regardless of the dollar amount of the purchase. In other words, the process cost of a $25 purchase is the same as a $10,000 purchase. Most often, the process cost exceeds the value of the item being acquired. Or in other words, the cost of a $25 wrench might actually exceed $25, maybe even upwards to $100 when you consider all the different costs associated with a traditional process. And when you evaluate that, estimates would say that the estimated cost of traditional processes of procure-to-pay range from $50 to $200. So that is obviously a very expensive decision to make when you are buying goods on behalf of the state utilizing the traditional procure-to-pay process. It is more than just simply the cost of the item that is at stake. What the P card allows us to do is it allows us a lot of benefits, one of which it simplifies the process. Most organizations recognize that a large number of check payments are made for low-value items to a large number of suppliers or vendors, and this is a very costly and inefficient process. When the payment method is switched from the traditional process to a P card or purchasing card process, efficiency savings range from 55% to 80% when compared to the cost of the traditional process. Based off of the National Association of Purchasing Card Professionals, they estimate that the typical savings resulting from using the P card and going through that process and not utilizing a traditional procure-to-pay process is a savings of $63 per transaction. And this is a significant amount of savings that we in the state of West Virginia can obtain by utilizing the P card. There are also some benefits as it relates to vendors. From a vendor's perspective, when we use a traditional procure-to-pay process, it can take from start to finish upwards to 45, maybe 60 days before that process is done. And so with that said, if you are a vendor then, and you are going through a traditional means, it's going to take those 45 days before you get paid again, which therefore is going to take a long time before you have the money to be able to buy additional items to restock your shelves in your store. When you consider utilizing the P card as the method of payment, well, now all of a sudden the vendor is able to receive their payment within 2 to 3 days from the financial institution. It also reduces overall costs, such as eliminating invoice creation, handling and mailing, depositing payments and collection activities. It also allows a faster receipt of payments and improved cash flow. Your sales are naturally going to increase because you have more money back into your budget, to which then you can buy more goods to fill your shelves in your store. And likewise, there is a customer satisfaction that is innately part of this. From a customer perspective, they are able to pay for their goods, receive the goods, and then reconcile after the fact. So there's much less stress there involved than for them to have to, it's been 45 days, and I'm still on this same transaction trying to make sure that my vendor is getting paid. So there are tremendous benefits for the vendors. And what this also results in is making the state of West Virginia a much better business partner with our local vendors. Vendors are now excited to do business with the state of West Virginia. They are able to accept the P card as a method of payment, and we as the state agencies are therefore able to utilize the benefits from these vendors of getting and receiving the goods sooner and paying for them sooner as well. And now let's discuss some of the benefits for West Virginia. In 1996 is when we implemented the purchasing card program for our state. And this was due in part, large part, of the vision of, at the time, State Auditor Glenn B. Gaynor III and his vision to help the state in many different facets, to which he presented the benefits before the legislature. And in 1996, through West Virginia Code 12-3-10A through G, and as well as Legislative Rule 155 CSR 7 was put into law. Some of the benefits that came out of the code is the reality that we as a state are able to receive from the financial institution what is called a rebate. Our bank at the time is Citibank. That's who we are currently contracted with. And through those negotiations of them winning the contract, we have a rebate to which, when we pay the master bill every month at a certain time frame, Citibank supplies for us a rebate or pays to the state of West Virginia a certain rebate that then we are able to fund the money of that rebate to state agencies, and I will be able to explain that in full detail here in a second. Another benefit for the agencies is the fact that they would have 30 days to pay for their bill, which would also enable the state treasurer's office to invest the state's money, a little bit longer. Every single month with the rebate, there are three major funds that the rebate goes into. Specifically, when we receive the rebate, 15.5% of the rebate will be transferred to what is called the Purchasing Improvement Fund. 10% of the rebate will go to the Hatfield-McCoy Regional Recreation Authority, and another 10% to the State Park Operating Fund. So right from the beginning, every single month, if you do the math, that's 35.5% of the rebate that comes in goes immediately to helping the operating funds of the state of those three things that I spoke of. The other 64.5% goes into the operating of the purchasing card division, and as well as to assist other state agencies as they try to implement their program within their office, in the hopes, of course, to further expand the P-card operations within their agency. If they are needing any assistance with that, the rebate, we're able to utilize the rebate to fund those improvements within their agency. It's a valuable tool that we have, and it's one that the more that we use the P-card for the purchase of goods and services, the more that we would be able to have an increase of rebate, which means the more that we would be able to put that rebate back into state government and considering the budgetary constraints that we have right now as a state, this is a win-win type situation for the state, to where the more we use the P card, the more money that we have come back on behalf of the state. And so it really is a great program that we're hoping, going through these trainings, that you will see value in when it comes to your agency and what you can do to help implement this program deeper into your agency, even more than what it currently is. Another benefit is on the public relations side of things. The P-CARD program, it has become the leading program throughout the entire country as it relates to state and local governments. The state of West Virginia, because we are smaller in size, we have actually taken advantage of that, and we have implemented the P-CARD program in both the state and local governments, whereas in other states like California, though they are larger in number and size, they are not able to fully implement the P-CARD program as deeply as what we do. Talking with our representatives from Citibank, I can share with you that they oftentimes use us as the state of West Virginia as the example, as the model of how to do or how to run the program correctly. They use our lessons learned that we have gained throughout the years here, now 20 years of the program, to encourage and to help other states as they try to implement their program to help them be more successful. So it is on a public relations side, it is excellent, and we are in very good standing across many states, our P-CARD program, and so this is a very, very good benefit for our state. Operationally speaking, another benefit of the P-CARD program is the fact that the P-CARD itself effectively decreases accounts payable expenses. It cuts administrative program costs. It offers increased control within your agency and helps with the monitoring of payments. Understand that the moment that a card is swiped, we know about it. It is electronically filed, and you as an agency can know exactly what every single person that has a card is buying the moment they buy it. So therefore, with all the benefits that I've discussed thus far, and considering all of the advantages for the P-CARD program, you can understand why the P-CARD program is the preferred method of payment for providing an efficient and effective process for the payment of state expenditures. Now I'd like to take a time here to talk through some of the statistics of the program as it relates to fiscal year 2016. Approximately 641,000 transactions were processed on the P-CARD last fiscal year. This is a considerable amount of transactions, and the average of each transaction, if we would do the math, ends up being $666.10. That may or may not seem like a large dollar amount to you. In reality, it actually is relatively small on average when we compare our program to other programs around the country. There is a $427 million volume that our program produced in fiscal year 2016. And again, when considering the standards of what the National Association of Purchasing Car Professionals have gave us in their research and the cost savings of utilizing the P-CARD versus a traditional procure-to-pay type process, we have approximately $18 to $110 million savings in just cost avoidance. That is a significant amount of savings. Again, this is just cost avoidance. What that means is that the more that you use the P-CARD for the buying of goods and services on behalf of the state, you're actually saving the state money because you're not utilizing the traditional procure-to-pay process to secure those goods or services, and therefore that innate savings on that and using the P-CARD process is where we come up with that range of value. Again, $18 to $110 million in cost avoidance is significant during this time frame in our state as we consider the budgetary crunch that we are under. Currently, we have more than 7,000 cardholders across the state, representing all of the agencies, the state government agencies. This number is just cardholders. This number does not include the number of coordinators or sub-coordinators that we also have in part of the program. This number also does not include the number of cardholders that we anticipate will come into the program as a result of travel and the changes that are in motion as it relates to travel. Many agencies are seeking to issue P cards to their travelers as they migrate away from the United Bank card to the P card, and so therefore we do anticipate a large increase to this number, and we look forward to that in the next or the upcoming year. The State Auditor's Office, P-Card Division, back in 1996, we established and implemented our policies and procedures. And throughout the years, we have increased or changed or modified our policies and procedures so that it is current and updated, and also always to maintain that it is or sets forth the minimum standards for the program to be run within an agency. Now, the minimum standards means that every single agency must abide by those standards. They are allowed to make their standards internally more stringent, just as long as they follow the minimum standards. It is important for every single spending unit to develop and document appropriate internal control procedures. They need to ensure that their program has proper oversight, that they are in compliance with all P-card policies and procedures, and as well as any sort of purchasing rules or laws or any other governing entities that they are responsible to be under. They need to make sure that everything is in compliance with those entities. Every spending unit also needs to have an adequate number of coordinators and cardholders in order to run the P-card program internally well. But understanding this, that every single person, coordinators, cardholders, needs to be knowledgeable of the policies and procedures, as well as the purchasing laws and guidelines that are in play, but not just them. Additionally, all agency staff, or if you will, anyone that has the responsibility of approving, reviewing transactions, such as agency heads, CFOs, department heads, managers, directors, supervisors, anyone, they need to also be knowledgeable of the policies and procedures. They need to know what rules are governing the program so that when they do the reviews, when they, if you will, even do the audits of the transactions, they are able to do those properly, knowing the rules that govern the program. This is very important as well underneath this, that the agency head shall serve ultimately as the top person for the program within the spending unit. Now, they may also designate an individual to serve as the CFO, and the CFO is responsible for the administration, the monitoring, and the oversight of the program. But the agency head is the person that is ultimately responsible for the program. Transactions naturally are permitted on the P-card as long as the agency can provide documentation to show its authority for the purchases and that they are following all the laws and rules and regulations along the way. So the P-card is truly just a payment mechanism. We do not tell people or agencies whether they can or cannot buy said items. They need to follow the purchasing rules and laws and rules and regulations that govern those type purchases. We have 6 different types of purchasing cards that are part of the program. The most common is the one card. Again, the one card is that combination of a corporate type card, and as well as a one card, it's able to do all the purchases that an individual would need to make on behalf of the state. It is not locked down to any specific merchant category code, limiting its purchases. In contrast, we have the travel card. The travel card is locked down to specifically travel-oriented merchant category codes, or in other words, MCC. And the travel cards are issued on behalf of the state to cardholders that they need a travel card. They travel on behalf of the state, and therefore they would be utilizing or having purchases like hotel stays, car rentals, etc., that are travel-related purchases, and they could use their travel card for those type purchases. We also have the Ghost account. The Ghost account is a card account that an agency has, and oftentimes it is in the central office to which the agency is able to reserve, or if you will, book hotel stays, again, car rentals, any travel type based transactions on behalf of somebody within their agency. This is oftentimes done on conferences, for example, when you have a direct pay situation, or direct billed, type situation where it's just directly billed back to the agency utilizing the Ghost card that is on account. A new type of card that you may or may not be familiar with is called the virtual card. The virtual card is a new type of avenue by which you can do purchases. And if I can give you a really quick understanding of what this means. The virtual card is obviously virtual. It is not a real hard plastic card. And what would happen is, first of all, a vendor would have to be set up to be able to accept the virtual cards, and they would go through that process with the bank. Again, in this case, for us, that would be Citibank. And once a vendor is approved with Citibank to where they would accept a virtual card on the Visa platform, then the agency is able to buy goods utilizing the virtual card platform. And this is how it would work. The agency would go online, and they would go to the vendor's website. Let's say it was OfficeMax. And they go to OfficeMax's website, they find the goods that they are wanting to buy. They go through the checkout process, and they submit through the checkout process, finishing that process. At that time, there is an automatically or systematically sent to Citi to say that because this vendor, in this case OfficeMax, is set up as a virtual card participant, then Citi gets notified of this transaction. Citi then will send OfficeMax this virtual card number. OfficeMax would receive the card number. They would process the payment then utilizing this virtual card number. The payment would go through and finalize. They would then inform Citi that it is now final on their end, and systematically the agency is then receives a confirmation in their email saying that this transaction has been completed, and here's your confirmation. There is no card swipe. There's no card number. In fact, the agency is unaware of what that card number is. It is truly a virtual card, and it is used one time, and that card number is now gone. Now, the reason why this is beneficial is because this significantly decreases the possibility of fraud. Since there's not a physical card in play, then there is no possibility of a card number being recorded and used at a different vendor, because once that virtual card number has been used by the vendor, then that number no longer is valid. There's no more limits on that card. It's now gone. So you can quickly see how this is revolutionizing the industry here, this platform. We would certainly encourage, if you have any questions on virtual card, you may certainly contact the auditor's office, and we'd be more than happy to address those questions. This is something that you will receive more information in the near future, but that is just a quick synopsis of what virtual card is about. The next card we have is the fleet card, which would naturally go into the fleet vehicles to purchase gas, for example. And then we have the emergency cards, which are given to our emergency personnel, just in case we have a state of emergency. All the cards have what is called, or take advantage of what is called, the chip and pin technology. This is a new technology that was pushed by the credit card industry, MasterCard and Visa, for example, as a way to further secure cards. Every card, and most of you may even have this in your personal credit cards, the chip and pin technology. And because of this, all of our card holders, when they receive the cards, they would actually need to activate the cards themselves in order to establish their PIN. which would then be part of that activation process. That PIN would then be associated with the chip, so that when they go and utilize their card at a point-of-sale location and they're utilizing a chip and PIN terminal, they would be able to go ahead and complete that transaction. P-card security cannot be overstated. It is very important to make sure that whoever the card holder is, that he or she keeps their card secure at all times. They do not give it to their boss or lay it out for others to see their account information, the card itself, or their statements. It needs to be kept secure. Another thing that we receive a lot of requests about are third-party payment processors like PayPal, Amazon Marketplace, etc. This is common, obviously, if you go to Amazon and you're doing a transaction, many times PayPal is the payment mechanism that they want to do as a third party. Or if you go through eBay, oftentimes PayPal is there, for example. If you as an agency are making a purchase and a third-party payment processor is involved here, you do need to stop that transaction in that moment and contact our office, the P-Card division, through the coordinator, who would ask for permission to be able to do this. And the reason why is because when you go through a third-party payment processor, you are losing your dispute rights. If something would happen, the item would not arrive, or it was broke, or something to where you wanted to dispute that rights, you would not be able to file a formal dispute with Citi to recoup your money. You would have no choice but to go through the third-party payment processor and try to recoup your money through them, and that might not go over as smoothly as it would if you were able to get utilize the card outside of a third-party payment process, just directly with the vendor themselves. So you contact us, we give you a waiver, understand a waiver, and you are accepting the responsibilities, and you acknowledge the fact that, yes, you recognize that you are waiving your rights, your dispute rights. Not only do we have do you need a waiver for third-party payment processing type situations, but you also need a waiver for gift card situations. A lot of our higher ed institutions utilize gift cards to give out to students as either rewards, or maybe they're having a competition to which this is an award that is given. Gift cards, that is fine. You simply need to email us and let us know the details that you would like to use the P-card to pay, or to buy for gift cards. Give us the details, and we'd be more than happy to grant that waiver. The state of West Virginia naturally is tax exempt, and so we need to make sure that your cardholders are always informing the vendors that they are tax exempt, that this item is for the state of West Virginia, and if they need to, they should have with them the tax exempt certificate to present to the vendor at the point of sale, so that the vendor understands that this is a tax exempt purchase. Convenience fee and checkout fee is a new topic that you may or may not be aware of. These fees may be paid with the P-card at the discretion of the spending unit. Now, what this means here, if I can take a moment to describe the differences between the two. So a convenience fee is a fee that can be assessed when a vendor is used outside of the standard operating payment process of the vendor. In other words, this. If a vendor is typically a face-to-face kind of a vendor, it has a storefront, the point of sale is a face-to-face type transaction, but then your cardholder does not go face-to-face. They actually utilize a different method to secure the items. There might be a convenience fee to go that alternative payment route. I'll give you an example. Let's say movie theater tickets. Typically, you buy movie theater tickets by going to the movie theater, and you're there face-to-face, and you buy the tickets. But if you would go to Fandango.com, which is a website, to which you go to that website, which is, again, not the theater directly, you're going through almost a third-party kind of situation. which is an alternative payment process, Fandango has the right to issue a convenience fee for the conveniency of utilizing them to secure the items. You can do that, and the key is that convenience fee must be a flat rate. It cannot be a percentage. A convenience fee can only be a flat rate, and that vendor must clearly state on their website at the checkout that there will be a convenience fee assessed. It cannot be a surprise. That's part of their due diligence as an online vendor, that they have to tell you that there will be a convenience fee, and they have to tell you what that convenience fee must be. Now, a checkout fee is different. A checkout fee is when you go to a vendor, and the vendor has, by the way, they have to clearly post this as well. They will say that if you plan on using the P card to secure or to pay for goods, then there will be a checkout fee assessed on your bill. Now, this checkout fee or surcharge fee is allowed to be a percentage. It can be no more than 4%, and here's a key. It can be no more than the percentage of the exchange rate that they have contracted with Visa or MasterCard. In our case, it's Visa. So in other words, as a vendor, there is a fee that they have to pay to Visa in order to be able to use the card. Visa says there's an exchange rate there. You have to pay a certain percentage, 1% or 2%, whatever that percentage is between them and Visa. So if it is a 2%, the vendor has a choice. Either they can increase the cost of all of their goods in their store by 2% to recoup those costs, or they can charge a checkout fee so that the customer is paying that 2%. What the vendor cannot do, though, is they cannot charge 4% to the customer when they are only being charged 2% to Visa. That has to be equal or less to the customer. They cannot be more than what they have to pay. So that is the difference. The convenience being a flat rate, and the checkout fee is allowed to be a percentage. And again, in both situations, the vendor has to clearly designate that there will be fees assessed. In West Virginia Code 12-3-10C, which I spoke to at the very beginning of our time this morning, this particular subsection within the code clearly designates that a penalty fee can be assessed against a spending unit of state government who submits claims for the payment of goods and services when those claims are authorized to be paid by use of the P card, and the spending unit has failed to utilize the P card for the purchase. And let me say that in layman's terms. In other words, if you choose to use the traditional procure-to-payment method for the payment of goods, when you should have used the P card, a fee can be assessed for that transaction. In actuality, per code, right now it is a $2 fee per transaction for every single transaction that you use the traditional method when the P card was a method of option. And of course, this is specific to the vendor. If the vendor accepts the P card, accepts Visa as a method of payment, then you should per code, you should be using the P card to pay for those goods and not using the traditional procure-to-pay process. So therefore, the proper utilization of the card is very important. I would ask you to consider and to think about within your agency, how many transactions does your agency go through in a given month where you're using a traditional process that should have been utilizing the P card as the payment payment method. It is important for you as the agency heads that are in the audience today listening to this to take a look at the utilization of the card within your agency to make sure that you are following this code, as it clearly states that we need to understand as agencies that every single transaction to which we can use the card to pay for the items, we need to do so. So please take a time and maybe even jot yourself a note to ensure that your agency is fully utilizing the P card for all purchases to which the P card can be utilized. I'd like to now transition and speak to the coordinators. Coordinators themselves are a very important piece to to this puzzle. The HB head shall serve as or designated individual to serve as the CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, and that person, of course, is responsible for establishing those internal controls, making sure that the financial operations and be accountable for all executive oversight and maintenance of the program, and to ensure that all the accounting internal control procedures are where they need to be. The CFO, the designee, is also charged with making sure there's enough coordinators in place within your agency so that they can adequately perform their duties in ample enough time. We understand that for most agencies, their coordinators, that's not their only job. They have many other jobs that they're doing. And so in order for them to be as efficient as possible, we would recommend that all agencies ensure they have enough coordinators in place so that they can be as efficient as possible. Each coordinator shall hold a position of knowledge and experience of all the responsibilities delegated to them. A change that we put into place because of the implementation of OASIS is the importance of a financial P-card coordinator. Every single month, every agency has to pay their P-card bill, and very often the main or primary coordinator is able to do so in an adequate amount of time. But there are those months that come that the primary coordinator is out, whether life happens and they're sick or they're not able to get the job done. We have now the policy procedure that every single agency is to have a financial coordinator that is knowledgeable of accounting procedures, who is able to be that backup coordinator and to be able to approve payments in the event that the primary coordinator is unavailable. No cardholder should be their own coordinator. We need to make sure that there is proper review in place. But in those circumstances where there is no choice, like in boards and commissions, they are smaller agencies, they need to have a written waiver from our office designating that they are allowed to be a cardholder and a coordinator approving their own payments, so their own transactions. Within 30 days of assuming the duties of a coordinator, that individual must go through and complete all training for the position of coordinator. That includes ethics training, that includes coordinator training, emergency card training, as well as travel guidelines as appropriate. The additional training is available upon request, and this happens every single year. We get requests from different agencies to come to their place and to provide face-to-face training. It is our joy to do that, and if that is something that you would like us to do, if you think for us to come to your agency and to train your coordinators or your cardholders a little bit more deeply, we would be more than happy to do so. Some of the duties or responsibilities of coordinators, they are naturally charged with issuing P-cards at the request of the coordinator. They need to verify that all the requirements are completed on behalf of the cardholder, that they have completed their training, that they understand their duties and responsibilities when it comes to being a cardholder. The coordinator also establishes all the limits associated with the card. That means the spending limit, which means the monthly spending limit, the transaction limits. They can even set how many transactions per day if they choose to. There's all those limits. The coordinator is responsible. And the coordinator is responsible for the canceling as well as destroying of P-cards. That naturally happens almost daily, to where there's a need to cancel or destroy cards for many different varieties of reasons. Additionally, coordinators are responsible to disseminate information down the ranks. This is very important. As they go to conferences, they need to take the information they have learned at the conferences and then properly disseminate that down to the cardholders to make sure they are up to speed with all of the newest and greatest information as it relates to the P-card program. Ethics law violations do occur. Maybe not as often as other type of situations, but if there is any possible ethics law violations, it is the responsibility of the coordinator to report this information to us, whether it is done by cardholders or vendors. We within the P-card division need to know of these possible ethics law violations. Coordinators need to perform biannual reviews of their P-card utilization levels, and what we mean by this is are the limits that are currently established on your cards, are they appropriate? based on what the individual needs the card limits to be so they can perform their duties well. For instance, if the typical transaction amount for your cardholder is going to be less than $1,000 a month, does it make sense to have a $10,000 limit on that card? Of course, that would be up to your discretion at the agency level to determine that, but certainly there is a greater increase of risk there if in reality they're only using $1,000 compared to the $10,000 limit. So that's part of that biennial reviews of the utilization levels, and that needs to be done by the coordinator on a biennial process. Addressing and establishing additional controls and policies as recommended by any external or internal audits is also part of the coordinator's responsibilities. This is important whenever our group happens to come in to performing on a counseling role, some program evaluations. We would recommend that the coordinator learns from these and therefore disseminates any changes to their controls or policies as recommended. This is important because ultimately we want your program to succeed and to be successful across the board. Sufficient internal controls must be in place, and we've talked about this before, so make sure they're in place and make sure that everybody within your agency knows about the internal control procedures, but they're not caught off guard because they don't know. So make sure everybody does know. And these procedures must be submitted to us in writing to the State Auditor's Office P-Card Division. This is a requirement that has been a long-standing requirement. We would ask for everyone to make a note to make sure that your internal control procedures are up to date and that they are indeed submitted to our office. It is the head spending unit coordinator's responsibility to ensure that the master bill is paid every single month. This payment process does begin at the transaction level. Every transaction, it must be fully reconciled prior to the monthly scheduled payment date. And so whatever guidelines or timelines that you have to set up within your agency to ensure that you are able to pay your bill on time, please do so. That means your coordinators need to get their things reconciled by, let's say, the 10th of each month so that you as a coordinator can get your responsibilities fulfilled by the 15th. Then please make sure you put those deadlines in play and that everybody follows those. If there's any application or maintenance that needs to be done to cards, of course, the application of new cards or the maintenance of existing cards, those need to be done within OASIS itself. That includes if you have to cancel a card because of either termination or a separation from employment, retirement. Again, you utilize OASIS for those type requests. Any lost or stolen cards need to be reported first to the financial institution, which currently is Citibank, and then to our office next within 24 hours of being notified of this. This is important. If something gets lost, we need to know about right away. And the reason why is because we want to limit the risk of fraud happening on these cards. And so we need to know about it so we can reduce the limits and put the card on hold, or if you will, freeze the card so that no purchases can be done on that card just in case it has been lost or stolen permanently. There is an insurance policy on each card. This was part, I just kind of spoke to this or alluded to this at the very beginning of our talk here. Every card has an insurance policy to which it's a liability policy in which the card is protected. If there is a fraud that goes against the card, it's protected up to $100,000 per card. So if there is fraud that happens, the state will be able to get reimbursed for those monies up to $100,000, which is very important. This obviously creates a situation where you should feel comfortable as an agency to go ahead and give your people cards that have shown a responsibility because of that insurance policy that's there. So as long as they're following the rules and regulation of the card, there will be no money lost as a result of fraud taking place on a card should those situations occur. In our final section of the presentation here this morning, I'd like to talk about reconciliation briefly, and this is very important. A very important process, which the reconciliation of P-card payments has changed as a result of OASIS. And we always need to make sure that during the reconciliation that all the procurement guidelines and internal controls are followed. So whatever they are within your agency, make sure your people follow them. And if you are an agency that either reconciles directly within OASIS or even through an interface type process, all of it will eventually be reconciled within OASIS, again, whether it's interface or directly, to where then the more we utilize the program within OASIS itself, we reconcile through there, understand the greater the data in the system, the more you are able to receive and to utilize that data for your benefit through the reporting functionality that I'll talk about here in a few moments. Cardholders must review all transactions to ensure they are legitimate. And again, this can be done whether they actually look at their bank statement and review the transactions there, whether they go into OASIS and review their transactions there. They must do that. The cardholders are utilizing the card. It's their transactions on behalf of the state, so they must review all of them to make sure that they are for official state business and that they have all the required documentation. That is very important. When it comes to reconciling within OASIS, though, the agency, it's to your discretion. You can have your cardholders reconcile their statements, their transactions within OASIS, which certainly is recommended, or a proxy can do this on behalf of the cardholder. We do have some agencies to which, because of where they're located, they do not have internet access, or at least an internet access consistency to which someone in central office is actually being a proxy on behalf of the cardholder who is in the field, and the proxy is going into OASIS and reconciling the items, the transactions within OASIS, and that's fine. We certainly understand that. The key is that within the internal control procedures, it clearly states what is going on. The fact that this is, if somebody in the field is sending their documentation to the proxy and the proxy is going in OASIS, that those steps are clearly outlined within the internal control procedures. The reconciliation process obviously revolves around the coordinator getting involved, agency heads, supervisors, directors, managers, coming in there and reviewing the transactions. And those individuals, whoever's in charge of reviewing the transactions, they need to have full knowledge as to what they're reviewing. They can adequately determine whether or not this is for official state business. They would have the ability to even question how many, the quantity of an item that is purchased. Do we really need 3 of these? Do we really need 4 of these? These individuals must be knowledgeable, and there must be an independent review of the documentation receipts. We would ask that all agencies get this done, as I previously mentioned, at an adequate amount of time so that they can authorize the payment of the transactions at the transaction level and ample enough time to where all of the reconciliation can be done by the scheduled payment date each and every month. To be transparent with you, there are months to where agencies do not hit the scheduled payment date in paying their bill on time, and so we really emphasize this because our goal is for all agencies every single month to reconcile their bill on time by the scheduled payment date. The more we use the program, again, the more data we have, the more that the reports that are available in business intelligence, or if you will, BI, within OASIS, would be more accurate. We certainly are increasing the number of reports that are available to our agencies utilizing BI. We are adding to those as often as we possibly can, and we would certainly encourage everyone to fully utilize BI the best they can to further help make their program grow and to be successful. Supporting documentation, receipts, receiving reports, etc., that needs to be part of every single transaction. You need to follow all the rules and laws that govern and governing instruments that govern the program. You need to make sure you follow those. All supporting documentation being attached to every transaction within OASIS is important because as auditors go into OASIS to do their audit, they need to be able to see the supporting documentation there so they can properly audit that transaction. And we would highly stress for agencies to adopt a zero tolerance when it comes to missing or inadequate documentation. P-card delegation, is completely prohibited. And what we mean by this is, and I'll use an example, is let's say we have an office situation to where the supervisor in charge has a P card in their name. And instead of them making the purchase, using the P card to make the purchase, they hand the card to someone else to make the purchase, whether it's their secretary, a colleague, or otherwise. They are delegating that to someone else. That is prohibited, and that cannot be done. That is actually against the policies and procedures. And the reason why is because, if you remember, we talked about P card security. It's important to keep it secure. And so we do not, it is not acceptable for you to give your card or card information to anybody else to make a purchase or even to see the card information. With that said, if you're in a situation to where within your agency P card delegation is going on and you know that is going on, we would encourage you to intervene in this situation. And let's just use my example again. If a supervisor commonly hands his card to his secretary and then he or she is making the purchases, we would encourage you to consider giving or issuing that secretary a P card in their name. That way they can just make the purchases in their name, and therefore there is no delegation going on. Our final slide in conclusion here this morning is talking about fraud, misuse, and abuse. In West Virginia Code 12310B, it goes over in detail what the failure to comply to the policy and procedures, and if fraud occurs, and all the consequences of in the situations where this might occur. We'd encourage you to take the time to verse yourself in this. We don't need to go into in detail. Everybody is well aware of what fraud is and misuse and abuse. But understand there are penalties in place, potentially prison time. There could very well be time of probation. Maybe additional mandatory training could occur in situations like this. But naturally, any instances of unlawful use or fraud or misappropriation or mismanagement of the card needs to be reported to our office immediately, within 24 hours of your discovery. And so you can simply contact the P card division directly for that. At this time, we will open up the phones for questions. Any questions that you may have for us. Again, we thank you for being with us, and at this time we will answer any of your questions.
During the course of today's presentation, we did not receive any written questions, but we do have 15 minutes left. We have been joined by Purchasing Director Dave Tincher, Deputy Director Mike Sheets, Assistant Director Diane Hawley-Brown, General Counsel Jimmy Meadows, and Jerry Shaw of the State Auditor's Office to assist in answering those questions. So at this time, I'll give you a couple of minutes to go ahead and type in any questions that you may have. The Q&A box is on the right-hand side of your screen. So go ahead and please type those questions in now. Okay, our first question is, should a Chapter 30 Board Executive Director have a P card?
It is not the policy of the state auditor's office to determine who within an agency may or may not have a card. Non-state employees are eligible at the agency's discretion to have a P card.
Okay, and our next question, what is the real distinction between an RFQ and RFP when services are involved?
RFQ and RFP are both valid processes for purchasing services. The threshold for an RFP, if you will, is $250,000, services in excess of $250,000. So services below that would be purchased on an RFQ. Above that $250,000 threshold, first you would have to ask, you have to send it in to us so we can make sure that this is a valid RFP request. We'll evaluate your request, and once that's approved, then you would begin to develop the RFP, and we would bid that out accordingly.
Okay, go ahead and please type in any other questions that you may have at this time. Okay, our next question, how can you develop specifications for technical services?
The specifications tend to be the heart of the contract that eventually comes about in the bid process. As with all specifications, whether it's technical services, whether it's commodities, market research is the place to start. Find out what's available in the market, find out what your users need, and that's basically the starting point. That will spur questions. You answer those questions through the process, and eventually you develop a full set of specifications that hopefully will meet your needs.
Okay, our next question, will there be a list of vendors who will accept the virtual card, or can any vendor potentially utilize it?
The virtual card is still in the developmental stage, working with Citi and Oasis on how the process is going to work. There will have to be a listing of vendors that will accept the card, and that's something that Citi works with the state of West Virginia to develop those vendors.
And we have just over 10 minutes left, so please continue to send those questions our way. Okay, our next question. Is there a way to consult with potential vendors to develop specifications which are technical and involve specialized jargon?
You're welcome to speak with potential vendors before the specifications are developed and come over to us. However, if any potential vendors are paid to develop the specifications, they can't then bid on the resulting solicitation. Once the specifications have come over to us for competitive bidding, that begins what we call the blackout period. From that point until award, no discussions can be had with vendors regarding the specifications out for bid. But you can definitely talk to potential vendors prior to submitting to us. In fact, we encourage you to do so, get their input as part of your market research to see what's out there on the market and available to you.
Please continue to send any questions our way using the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. It appears that we have no other questions at this time. I'd like to thank you for participating in today's purchasing card procedures and P-card rules training. This concludes today's presentation. Thank you very much.